I have Kyle Forrest with me. He is the U.S. Human Capital Chief Marketing Officer for Deloitte Consulting. He is new to this role, only I think about a month in, but he's coming off about 16 years of service, focusing on the breadth and depth of human-related aspects of transformations in mergers, acquisitions, and divestitures. He's also led Deloitte's Chief Human Resource Officer Academy for the last 8 years, developing the next generation of HR leadership. Kyle, welcome to MTech Digital. So have a seat. Audience, you know the drill. You've heard it from everyone. Share your questions, raise your hand, tell us who you are, and please get to the point of your question. So let's begin. Before we get into the meat of the matter here, I do understand that you had a proud parenting moment this past weekend, so tell us all.
I did. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I'll start, I know we're the afternoon slot, by answering that question with a brief audience engagement. Can folks raise their hands if they are a parent? Can you keep your hands up if you have coached a child in a sport? Can you keep your hands up if you've ever been fired by your child in coaching that sport? A few people. So, so this weekend, my older daughter won her soccer playoffs. It's the first season I didn't coach her, so she said I will no longer be coaching her. So
good. So that seems like human capital is maybe an area of focus.
Absolutely.
So we'll get straight into the Global Human Capital Trends Report. You all released this. I think you do this every year.
Yes.
And you released it in February. So for those of you in the audience, I believe if you scan this QR code, you can get access to it. You can also get it on our attendee portal. So dig in. There's a lot to it. It's 100 some odd pages, and there are 9 key trends.
Yes.
Can you tell the audience which trends do you think are the most important? I mean, I know they're all important, but which ones do you think are the most influential?
Absolutely. So a little bit about the Deloitte Human Capital Trends Report. It's the longest longitudinal study of its kind. We've been publishing it since 2011. This year we had over 14,000 respondents from 95 different countries. And when I was thinking about this topic, this afternoon session, AI and the next generation of the workforce, there were really 3 that I thought would resonate with this group. One, what we call the transparency paradox, which is really, what is the data that you're using? How are you using it? Who is using it? How do you tell the workforce on the other end the outcomes of what you've done with that data, right? All tied to generative AI and workforce productivity. It's inside the black box, right? But it shouldn't be. The second, I was actually talking this morning with one of the audience members, Cal, from Further, around this beyond productivity, right? And we've been using traditional measures for a long time, and we need to look at different measures to truly show how are humans, how is the workforce being productive in an era of AI. And the third is something that we call the digital playground, which is actually, how do you create a safe space for employees to engage with AI, bring creativity and curiosity and imagination to it, so they're not approaching AI with fear, right? And they're kind of exploring new and different things.
So you also, as I understand it, have another report on human capital trends. In addition to that report, you have another one, which is about generative AI specifically.
Yes.
In the enterprise. So this report talks about building trust and evolving the workforce. Can you dig into that? I think that's where most people's interests lie.
Absolutely. And I'll start by actually sharing this meme as I was thinking about this session. Early 2023, what happened? Generative AI came out and people jumped to the end. It's going to be amazing. And then what happened in kind of, April, May, June? People are like, oh, hallucinations. How are these models trained? Is there bias in the model, right? And there was a lot of focus on the data, right? So when I think about the Q2 state of generative AI in the enterprise report that we've recently put out, which had over 2,000 respondents, if I were to put the top step of truly achieving an AI-enabled workforce, some of the steps to get there would be, how are you enabling trust in the workforce in engaging with AI, right? How are you helping the workforce evolve beyond what their job looks like today? What's the career path? Where do they go if their job has been impacted by AI? And then I think a third step is actually, are you scaling generative AI to the broad workforce? One of the data points we have up here says that only 50% of companies, or 50% of companies, have only given access to 20% or less of their workforce from a generative AI, pilot perspective. And so there's kind of four areas of the report where we see organizations making change now. One, scaling up to the population this year. Number two, being much more focused on what's the outcomes of those pilots, right, to show value. Three, the trust topic and building workforce trust. And four, how are organizations navigating that evolution?
And this QR code will get that second report.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. It's interesting that 75% are expecting to change their talent strategies within. That's a lot. And what does that mean? Like, how ambitious do we mean?
Yeah.
What are we saying about change my talent strategy? That can be minor, major.
Absolutely. And I think based on industry sector, it's all going to look a little different, right? I think, hearing Paulina earlier today talk about AI in the ER, right? How the workforce evolves in the medical domain will look very different for how the workforce evolves in, professional services or in technology organizations, right? Yeah. And so I think where people will start to see that talent strategy change is which jobs are impacted.
Yeah.
How much is the impact? Is it a true elimination of a job, or is it an augmentation, right? Can this person do more now than they could previously? And what does that also do relative to talent strategies, right? Where are you sourcing people to differently, or how are you thinking about the workforce now, including full-time, part-time, contingent contractor, and digital FTE?
Right. What's a digital FTE?
Some of the agents that folks were talking about earlier could be an example, right? Because you now have an agent, or this morning in the first 60 seconds, I had my shock of the day with Melissa's avatar, right? Think about in the future the ability to have an avatar that looks like a person or sounds like a person and is fluent in multiple languages.
Yeah. Wow. All right, let's talk about trust. I think you can, this plays in nicely to this topic that you've just talked about, Melissa's avatar and digital FTEs. You can find lots of stories about new jobs being created and all the jobs that are expected to be impacted by generative AI. So as workers, as members of the workforce, how are we expecting people to navigate those changes?
Yeah, so we brought a little bit of data into this because we've done a bunch of research relative to trust as well at large and trust at the intersection of AI. And so, a couple of data points that I'll point out here. If you're an organization that has a trusted status with your workforce, workers are less likely to leave, right? And so if you apply that to AI, right, and rolling out AI, you need to put things in place that don't damage that trust, right? What is your trustworthy AI framework? How are you using the data? How are you deploying it? If you start to see productivity gains from workers using AI, what does that mean for folks who in their jobs, right? Is it 20% productivity, 20% job loss, or is it 20% productivity, now there's more, right? So what we also talk about from our Human Capital Trends report is it doesn't need to be a business outcome only, right, focus. It should be business outcome and human outcome. And how can you look at the two together to really drive value?
But it's also about engaging the workforce in evolving how the work gets done and the skills that are needed to use generative AI. What do you think? What are the skills that you're seeing on the rise? So if a digital avatar is going to be doing a certain set of tasks, for example, in my team, what does that mean for the skills requirements of other members of the team? Or how are you suggesting that leaders think about the upskilling or training that they're going to need to bring to the humans that will remain employed?
Absolutely. This is the one thing that the kind of last slide I'll put up to frame some of the conversation today and leave it up here for a little bit. Look, it's really not humans being replaced by AI, but humans will be replaced by other humans using AI, right? And so skills that we see organizations exploring right now, look, there's absolutely the technical ones, more people who have AI fluency or understanding of the technology, prompt engineering skills at a wider scale, right? If you think about some of the things, I think Srinivas had kind of an agent diagram that was GPT 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through. You can apply that to any function of the organization. So every function, every type of job, people are going to need to know something related to prompting. But on the other end of the equation, we really look at some of the human skills needed, right? You need to have creativity when you think about how can I use this thing in new and different ways than it might be told about. You need to actually be good at working in teams, right? Teams that now might include digital FTE, right? How do you engage? I think a last thing that we see from a skill kind of on the rise in demand from a human perspective is agility and flexibility, right? We've been in an era of continuous disruption in the last few years for a variety of reasons. We're going to always be in an era of continuous disruption going forward. And so how do you get people comfortable with living in that era of continuous disruption so that they're able to be the ones leveraging AI for the benefit of their company, their society that they live in, the world at large?
Yeah, and I think it's about humans that are using AI humans will need to decide, I'm going to be one of these folks that makes it, and that means I need to kind of learn about how to embrace AI, how to use it. But the question I have is, I may have loads of questions like anybody else who doesn't know what the future really is going to look like. But how do you nurture that kind of creativity? Some of the tasks are creative tasks, that
Yep.
we all do, in a given week. But then there are others where, we've trained and cultivated a less creative mindset. I don't know, maybe it's finance or whatever. What are some examples, like some cases or some places where you've seen people think about how to get their people to creatively embrace it?
Yeah. First of all, if there are any creative financial professionals in the audience,
I've just offended you.
Hopefully you still feel like you can
my
be creative.
It's my ignorance, it's completely my fault.
But so there are two aspects of the Human Capital Trends Report that we really focused on. How do you allow for imagination in your workforce and this kind of digital playground concept? And we used an organization in the report who built a digital kind of twin of an airport, gave their employees access, and said, go, right? Think about how when we build this thing differently, you might be able to have a better customer experience from the folks who are flying, from the workers who are at the airport. How do you think from a safety perspective? We can think about planes that are maneuvering around or luggage handlers who are driving around or all those different things. And so creativity comes in all forms and fashion. And really it's about making a safe space where people can explore and do things differently. And the power of AI and generative AI is you can do that in new and novel ways that accelerate time to kind of an output or an outcome of a scenario. And you can model it in very different ways than we could in the past.
Yeah. I also thought it was interesting in the report, the assertion that generative AI's future success hinges on a renewed focus on humans rather than away from humans. It's about leaning in. And I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. There, at various points of innovation over human history, there's this point of we introduce a personal computer or we introduce robots in factory, and there's this focus on efficiency. And efficiency is good, but innovation and growth are great and better, right? And lead to exponential outcomes from a societal perspective and for the workforce. And so if humans weren't in the mix, no one would be looking at generative AI and saying, oh my gosh, this thing's incredible, right? Because it's all in the contrast of what's the impact on the human, right? The human in the center. And so I think, again, at Deloitte, our perspective is if you're able to focus on human outcomes and business outcomes at the same time, it's only going to be that much more impactful for organizations at large, for society at large. So there's a lot of opportunity ahead for us.
So I want to offer opportunity for people to ask questions. If you have a question, I can see some hands. There's a hand in the front. There's a hand there in the back. Good. Please tell us who you are and what your question is.
Hello, I'm Robin Kim. I'm from Neo4j, and Kyle, Elizabeth, thank you.
Yep.
My question is, there's also some demographic shifts within the workforce, right? It's getting older, and older people are also getting in the workforce for longer. Are you seeing any nuances within your trends that take that demographic into account, especially with Gen AI?
Short answer is yes, and I'm glad you asked this question because in the last week, I feel like when I've been speaking with some people, I get a little esoteric and I say, there's data out there that says by 2085, the world's gonna hit its peak, and on the far side of that, we go in the other direction, right? We go from 10 billion to 2 billion, right, within, I think, 200 years. And
You're talking about population?
population,
My goodness.
world population, yes. And I was chatting with Brian right before coming on, and he said, if you see some articles in the last couple weeks, there was a article titled like, where are the babies? People are freaking out, right? Because there are countries around the world, 0.72 birth rate replacement, right? Or 0.85, right? And so when you think about that context and the generative AI and AI capabilities, if we really lean into it, we need to create more capacity for humans, right? And in that context, we actually need an approach that it's okay to automate certain things, right? Or to eliminate certain things because an agent or AI can do it, because it frees up capacity for the remaining workforce on the other side of that dip, right? Because I don't think humanity at large is going to course correct and solve to continue growing, right? Because of all sorts of societal implications for, what have led us to this moment, right? So the report does look at that. We also recently just published our annual kind of Gen Z in the workforce report and tackle some of that as well.
Question here?
Betty Jurina, Assistant Chair of Computer Science at New Jersey City University. 2 questions. One, the notion that employees would have a stake in a company, is that part of the importance of the entire framework you're talking about, or is that a separate issue?
So it's a separate issue. I mean, every organization, public, private, has different rewards and incentive plans relative to how they, give employees grants or stakes, right? There have been recent trends in private equity to actually grant more employees ownership in those organizations as private equity firms take it on. But I think if you approach the concept of an organization needs its workforce to survive and how do employees engage in something like generative AI, it wouldn't surprise me if more kind of stock equity models start to appear to get more of their workforce engaged.
The other, do immersive environments help in the upskilling in the metaverse?
So I know some folks in the last few years have maybe thought the metaverse concept was not going to become a thing. I think now there's been a renewed focus on immersive environments. I even think when you look at that avatar from this morning and think about an immersive environment with avatars that are that realistic versus some of the more simpler ones that were previously used, I think it really changes the game for where that type of investment and environment can go.
Exciting. Is there a question there?
Yes, thank you so much. Aaron Frank, Gedankenfabrik. I like that quote. I heard that a few times, and I like to think about the second part, like humans using AI, because I think a lot of technology, we're using AI in the background or machine learning things already. So I think we all make use of AI in our workplace already in one form or another. So with Gen AI being a new form, I'm wondering like how harsh the transition is going to be, because in the end of the day, it's going to be in our programs in the background anyways. So do you think like with the trend of prompt engineering here and there, that's just adopting early, we're changing the workflows at the moment for just a tiny like fraction of the time and coming back to like how we work now with our workforces? Or do you think, no, everything becomes more technical, the trend that has been happening before? Thank you.
Yeah, so a couple things. In our 2019 trends report, we actually spoke about this concept we called the super job at the time, and then 2020 super team, which is all about how does the employee or the team begin to use AI to augment itself. I think we were too early. Now you can see that augmentation of the team and the job in a very different way. And Sherry this morning in her AWS segment spoke about needing to rethink some organizational norms. I think that needs to happen. And the last thing, when I saw Srinivas show the conversational Meowton dad joke, one of my daughters recently got her through her joke book phase. And if I think about the kids of today who potentially grow up with conversational AI that they can connect with, I think we're going to have elements of the workforce where they just come in natively and Gen Alpha, and they're going to be using conversational AI left, right, front, center, because that's just what they grew up with, right? But there does need to be an emphasis on some of the change management, adoption, trust angle with the workforce of today to make sure that the adoption rate is that much faster.
So I think that darkening lights signals that it's time for us to wrap this up. Can you wrap this up for us, please, Kyle?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Elizabeth, Brian, and the team for welcoming me here. Second, hopefully this is a little bit of a positive. It's a call to action, right? The things we can do to keep the workforce centered at the heart of this AI topic. And I hope as you listen to Nancy and Julie and Andrew in the afternoon sessions that you also have some positive ideas for how to really bring this to be a reality. So thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.